This is the game that I've been working on for over 2 years at this point, an indie game where you return to an abandoned game project, only to find that the NPCs have continued working on the game while you were gone. It features sandbox-like gameplay akin to that of Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing, but with more of an emphasis on the community building system. Sorry for the jump scare. It has been 4 months since the last devlog. It was not my intention to go this long in between devlogs, but what can you do? We're here now. So I am actually really behind in just what I want to show. I have a lot of content that I've been working on, a lot of things that I've been adding. In this devlog, the intention was to talk about the dialogue system. However, there's a lot of like extra stuff that I kind of threw in there at the end, you'll see. But first thing, I'm gonna be just talking about setting up the dialogue system for the NPCs. So a big buzzword in my game is immersion. I really want to make it feel like the NPCs in the game are real, I guess. They're kind of like existing in the game outside of just, the player interacting with them. I want the NPCs in my game to have depth. They are the most important part of the game. Or maybe like one of the most important parts. I don't want to give them too much credit. But the dialogue system is probably one of the most important parts for making these NPCs feel actually alive and have the town actually kind of come to life. So I had a few goals going into the dialogue system. First, I wanted to be able to convey information to the player about what the NPCs were doing. Next, I wanted the player to be able to talk to the NPCs, obviously pretty standard thing you should have in a dialogue system. And then the last thing was I wanted the NPCs to be able to have conversations with one another that were independent of the player, meaning they could have conversations but the player wouldn't necessarily need to be involved in the conversation. So first thing was getting the NPCs to convey information to the player, and I did this by actually adding speaking commands that get triggered by actions that the NPCs are doing in the GOAP system. And if you don't know what the GOAP system is, I have a whole video explaining. The non-kind of technical explanation of it is that whenever the NPCs are doing something in the GOAP system, if that action either passes or fails, I can just like trigger a little dialogue tag and then have the NPC say something about like what they're doing. And this is actually really helpful for me for debugging. All of the white text that you kind of always see at the bottom of the NPCs, that's not going to be in the real game. That's just for me, for my purposes, for my sake at the moment, for my sanity. I'm not going to give the player debugging information, but they kind of need to know like, hey, what is this guy like doing? These little like one-shot pieces of dialogue from the NPCs I think work really well in that regard. They are kind of talking to themselves, but like whatever, that's what I'm doing right now. Also, if the NPCs get stuck at any point in the GOAP system because they don't like have something, they can mention it to the player. And this will be really useful for tying in kind of like the community aspect. I'll have a way for the player to be able to like see what the NPCs are doing, what they need. So I actually had a lot of this kind of set up originally from like a couple months back, but I didn't have the part where they could actually speak back and forth to one another, and this took a little bit of messing around with, but I did get it working. And then I kind of went on a spiral of figuring out how am I going to handle having a bunch of NPC to NPC conversations, and how am I going to write all of this dialogue, and how am I going to make these conversations actually just like work with the rest of the game. So the NPCs aren't going to talk, obviously, if the player isn't nearby, because if the NPCs are speaking and there's no player around to hear it, are they even conversing? I don't know. Regardless, doesn't matter. I did get this working, and then I devised a system of Basically, I do have conversations for all of the NPCs in the game between one another that I will be writing the dialogue for, and there will be kind of just like stages for the storylines of those two kind of NPCs together. I wanted to jump in while I'm editing this and talk a little bit more about the NPC to player system, because for some reason I just didn't talk about it when I recorded the audio for this. Basically, this is set up actually integrated with the GOB system, and I have a way for the NPC to pretty much like flag down the player if they have something that they want to tell them. They will pretty much like chase the player around, and the player can choose to interact with the NPC. They can just ignore the NPC, and then the conversation will get canceled eventually. When the player talks to the NPC though, they will start the conversation, and the dialogue system is pretty much set up in the exact same format that the NPC to NPC dialogue format is set up. So I have this like node-based system that allows the conversation to branch if the player selects different options from this option menu. I have a little bit more to this system that I'll talk about in a later devlog, where it's kind of integrated in with the cutscene and the whole questing system as well. All of the dialogue is actually held in JSON files that are external to the project. This is important because now it is actually possible, if I ever need the dialogue for the game translated, it's not just stuck in a bunch of scriptable objects in Unity. I was just kind of like cleaning it up and adding in these like white boxes around the dialogue bubbles, because it was kind of hard to see the text in the game, especially once everything is loaded. There's like a lot of new sprites and assets I've been adding, as you can see, and it's starting to look chaotic. Okay, and then aside from the dialogue system, there's a crazy amount of things that I've just kind of added that were like smaller things that needed to be done. So I fixed chests working because they didn't work anymore. They also never saved at any point, but now they do work and you can save your items and chests on the map. I also added just a little bit of polish and stuff for some of the UI and the inventory system and all of the controls as well, for things like clicking on the map and through the inventory. I started setting up the UI for the building town building upgrade system. So basically the system where you can contribute resources in order to get the buildings in the town to the next stage. Then I also did a little bit more work on crafting UI. I created this new kind of creepy, weird little store where you can buy super OP items in the game. That also slightly break the game as well. I put in a couple of like special items too. So these are the dev doors is what I'm calling them. Basically 2 doors you can put down in the game and you can use them to teleport across the map. I also added in a weather system as well. This was actually pretty easy to do. It's just like little particle systems. So there's 2 weather events currently in the game, rain and then just like spaghetti blood rain. And I started setting up the dynamic environment as well. So when the morality system is triggered either in the good or bad direction, different types of plants and like trees and stuff are going to start spawning, but I still need to kind of add this a little bit more. I also just worked on like adding tons of items in the game. Another really big one is fishing. I made the fishing mini game as well. It's pretty simple. You actually do the entire mini game just pressing one key press, so just the W key, and then you basically reel and release the fish by like pressing the key and making sure that the tension doesn't build up. I also got it so the NPCs could fish. Basically just been setting up the map more and more. Spawn rates of stuff in the game. At one point there was an obscene amount of crabs all over the map. Just fixing a lot of bugs, or like, I don't know, I don't want to call them bugs, just like things that I did not foresee needing to fix. Then spent an entire week adding in animations for all of the NPCs in the game. This took, like I said, literally an entire week. each NPC has, I think, 7 animations, and there are 14 NPCs in the game currently. So I made all their animations, them in the game, set them up, and that was absolutely horrible. But added a lot of a life to the game. Yeah, I made it so they could all die too. I also added in the overworld map to the game as well, which I need to still work on a little bit, adding in markers for where the NPCs are, but I did this basically just by zooming out the camera on the actual map itself, so you will have a real-time overview of what is happening and where everybody is. It'll be a little more clear once there's icons. But that's pretty much it for the moment. I have a few more things that I've worked on, but I'm gonna split that, I think, into a different devlog. The intention, though, was not to go this long between the last devlog and this one, but I've just been really focused on getting the game to work. And it does. It works now. I'm actually in a really good spot for the game. There's still a lot of work, though, that needs to be done, a lot of polish that needs to be done, and I'm gearing up, hopefully, towards having a working demo. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.